All right, welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Yeager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Yeager. Today, we're going to be talking about professionalism in time attack. So, Kilgore, tell me something. When you think of professionalism in time attack, what are you really thinking about? What really stands out to you?
When I think of like professionalism, that doesn't necessarily mean to me that you have to have a big team or that you have to have like a bunch of stuff or that you have to have like the highest end equipment. To me, that just means that you do the small things right and you do the small things well and you try and think about, okay, what am I trying to do here? What's my goal? In time attack, that's to run the fastest lap that you can. That means you need to have your car prepped. So I'm talking in generalities here, but you want to show up to the track with your car ready. You also want to show up and you be ready, right? Showing up to the track and you're still working on a car, which if you listen to our podcast on the last episode, you heard Yeager talking about that's happened to him in the past. And you can speak to it, right? Like, it's not a lot of fun. You're not going to put your best foot forward. There's a greater risk that you don't put your best foot forward, that you're not going to put in your best time if the car's not prepped, if you're not prepped, if you're not ready. And to me, that's sort of what I think at a universal level, whether we're talking about the pros or whether we're talking about grassroots motorsports, it is being ready, and that is for the car and yourself to turn the fastest lap that you can.
And I would agree. I think, we're in time attack as a whole, professionalism, I think it's something that we're still working towards. I truly believe that, there is those top tier teams that really have it together. People that come to mind, obviously Life Motorsports, right? There's definitely a lot of people that show up that have a ton of what I would consider professionalism. And when I say that, I mean they have things like matching team uniforms. They come together. Their trailers are wrapped. Their cars are wrapped. They all have logoed out, and that starts that professionalism in motorsports to me, because I look at drifting, for instance. I'll go to drifting. I don't know why, but let's go to drifting for 2 seconds, right? You can easily pick out any team in drifting, just based on the fact that they all have this matching attire, right? And then you can go to any racing series at any point, and that's all very synonymous, where that's the big standout to me. And that's something that's so simple, so easy to accomplish, and lets you stand out in that minor way versus very the amateur hour look of when you show up in, t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops, Rob Campbell, and then you just show up and it is what it is. So give me kind of your impressions. Give me some teams that kind of stand out to you when you start talking about that have that little bit of moxie.
Yeah, I think sort of what you just said and what I just said, I think you can sort of look at it as there are sort of two types of professionalism, not really two types of professionalism, but I can kind of see a dichotomy here, which is an inner professionalism in terms of how you perform, and then also an outer professionalism in terms of how you look, right? Like how you're presenting yourself. And to your question, some of the teams that I think of are I want to get away from that, right? I want to get away from saying teams, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a team, right? Competitors who sort of present professionalism. So when I think of some people who have professionalism, and I'm going to try and sort of spread this around to different organizations that I've run with. So, you don't think that we're trying to really harp on one series being more professional than the other. But for Grid Life, the guys that I've really seen who sort of have that professionalism, I immediately that comes to my mind is ASM, Andy Smedegaard Motorsports. So they have a very well run. He runs that team. He runs that organization very well. They always have things. He's got a checklist of things whenever you see them at the track. They're constantly going through They have a checklist when they go on, before they go to grid. Once they get there, they're checking things in terms of, what do we need. They have sort of a process. When they come off track, they're going to look over data. They're going to look at stuff. They're going to figure out, what do they want to do next? When's the next, when are they next on track, etc. So things like that, I think, sort of indicates that they have a high level of professionalism. I also think of there's the Birmingham race guys. I'm trying to think of exactly what their name is now. They're going to kill me for this. I'm talking about like Andrew Rains and some of those guys. But they're currently running with Tolos. So they've got sort of Tolos branded apparel, Tolos on their cars. But they also a very well run group. Andrew, he's actually run in the professional series before, so he kind of knows what do the big teams do. Yeah, right. Like, what do the big teams do? What things do they know to look out for? What things do they know to think about that maybe some of the amateur guys don't always think about in terms of making their life easier at the track, things that they need at the track, as well as maybe things that you don't really, maybe that you spend too much time on as an amateur that you think is important, but maybe really isn't always important. So those two groups immediately, they immediately come to my mind.
Yeah, because, like, just again thinking back to Coda earlier this year, right? When I think of Eric Fleming, the group from I can't think of the name, the team, dang it.
Yeah.
But Eric Fleming and those guys there, right? So that Corvette, that whole team, when you saw the professionalism of that team, when he had, I think he had a diff go out at the event, and you saw how they were able to get that sorted, get that taken care of, and then get back on track, stuff like that. Now, I'll do a little bit of picking on somebody right now, mainly because it's easy. But Ferris, right? Ferris is one of the most interesting persons in Time Attack, because when it comes down to it, when you say professionalism, right? I think Ferris has a ton of professionalism in how he represents his brand and how he is, his suit, matching the car matching him. Like the World Time Attack regalia was awesome. But when it comes down to it, like, I was always so blown away, and this also goes for Jackie Ding and his crew. These guys are showing up with like a borrowed truck with an open trailer and like 3 tools in their bag, and it's always astonishing to watch these guys be able to go out and do surprising, like, to me it's almost like a surprisingly well factor of like, you guys are crushing it, going out and just killing it from that perspective. But at the same time, like, my like motorsport professionalism aspect like comes to mind, where I'm like, man, when I look over at you guys, I would have assumed you guys were going to be more of like a Mickey Mouse Club, versus when I look at the Eric Flemings and the Cole Powelsons of the world, where I'm like, expectations are immediately high, right? And I'll even throw in like Brett Dickey and the Project Import guys, right? Which Project Import is a very interesting thing within themselves, because when we talked about it earlier, when you start talking about showing up to the track ready, I still remember looking at, asking questions, what was going on with the Project Import S2000 at finals last year, and it was like, oh, they're rebuilding an engine. Like, wait, what? You're doing what in the? I mean, don't get me wrong. I think anybody in unlimited class, the likelihood of maybe you having to do some crazy crap in the garage is obviously going to be high, especially when you're talking about 4-cylinder turbo cars. But at the same time, like, that group, they exude the professionalism. They go to Pikes Peak. They do all this other stuff. But obviously, just like anything else, anything can happen. So let's try to pinpoint a little bit more. I mean, I obviously went on the outer attack, right? Where like my expectation is, and this is also, I'm just going to quickly say this. This goes down to like when we start talking about, hey, let's get up on a podium and let's collect our trophies. I have the most heartburn in the world when guys show up to collect a trophy in flip-flops and t-shirts. Like, that just bugs me to no avail. I want full race suits. I want hats, team hats. Like, I want like pit shirts. I want it to look as professional as possible up on that podium. And I say that because for the sponsors that are, pushing and helping these guys get these cars out there and so on and so forth, I think that that's something that they deserve. They deserve to, have their drivers look that way. And you were touching on the concept of, on the internal side of the professionalism and being able to probably write a professional email in terms of like, hey, I'm going to go get a sponsorship. Let's see how I can, exude and talk to those people and internalize what do we have going on, planning, getting everything situated, making sure you have spares, make sure the trailer's good, car's good before you show up to the event. And I think both of those internal and external factors all play right into exactly what we're going with here. And I think that's something, as much as I will also say this, tell me if I'm wrong, but Time Attack is a grassroots motorsport. So we can't expect everybody to come into the game and instantly be perfect, right? So what do we think our expectations of a guy showing up for enthusiast class is going to be? Give me an idea.
Yeah. So, I'll come back to that. I do want to say one quick thing which you made me think of, which is, there's always that moniker. And I think this actually goes for both the competitors. I think this also, we could apply this to the actual organizations themselves as well. Agreed. Are there organizations that actually present with professionalism? Is the event run in a professional manner, right? And if you want to live stream your broadcast and you want people to take you seriously, you need to do that in a professional manner. And so that sort of, as you were talking about having, being up on, if you're going to be up on the podium, you're going to be, presented with a trophy, especially if that is in an organization, Grid Life or Global Time Attack, at which that may be streamed. Even with SCCA, they're going to be taking pictures. You can be put into a magazine, Grassroots Motorsport the magazine may be there, right? You may be in some sort of social media, but you should. And this, I thought of this as you were talking about it, and it's kind of cheesy to say, but you should dress for the job that you want, right? Like that kind of that is an age-old moniker, but and that just sort of goes to, you should present yourself in the light that you want people to take you as. If you want to be the guy in flip-flops and a t-shirt and you just get your trophy, right? Like, and you don't really care, like, that's fine, but if you are that guy, but you want people to take you seriously and you want, maybe you want to go to some sponsors in the future, then it's one of those things where you need to be proactive about it. And this sort of goes to sponsorship in general, which teaser, we'll be talking about in a future episode. But and you should be doing things now that make you that make sponsors or make people want to associate themselves with you, versus it being the other way around, where it's like, well, once I start getting big, then I'll start acting professional.
And because we've seen that a lot, where people have that mentality of, well, I'm just an enthusiast class guy, I'm just a street class guy, and they really don't, like you're saying, they're not thinking of the forward thought. I mean, I'm going to pick on a guy right now. I'm going to pick on Tony Zerka himself. 2016, I won, the biggest event that I've ever won and ever will win in GTA finals, used to be Super Lap Battle. And I'm standing up on the podium spraying champagne, having a great time. I'm wearing the suit behind me here. And I literally
does it still smell like champagne?
You damn well know it still does. But it's one of those funny things where, in the photos with Tony next to me, standing on that podium with me, in flip-flops and shorts. And it's like, yeah. I want the guy, I want that photo showing three amazing, drivers up on stage, up on that podium, looking their part, right? And I
Yeah.
want that in that photo, as well as, and that's just my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I
The
know there's a lot of
organization should
people.
want that as well.
Agreed, 100% agree. And I know for fact, like GTA, that's one of their things that they're trying to really push is
Yep.
consider that. Like they want people to consider, hey, when you're doing this podium and we're taking your picture and we're going to be giving you or allowing you to blah or taking photos, and like you said with live streams, you guys have to think about that. And that's something that, for myself, I always, and interestingly enough, I always treated all of my time attack career it kind of as a business per se. I always wanted to exude that as like, this is something that I care about. This is something that I'm pushing forward and continuing to try to, do better at. And that was a big part of what I always tried to do.
Yeah. So
So
we got a little bit off your question, so I'm going to try
Yep.
and
Bring
get
us back.
there.
Bring us
Kinda-
back.
Yeah, we went down a rabbit hole there a little bit, but I think that was good. Enthusiast class, right? Like so. Let's give a little bit of context. Enthusiast class is for global time attack. You might kind of say that that's like the entry level, which I think is fair to say. That is an entry level or the entry level class.
It is. Yep.
Into global time attack, meaning that the rule set is probably the how. I hate to say that the rule set is the heaviest, but it's not really. But it is geared towards a simplified cars, so to speak, in terms of they limit the cars that can actually be in that class. And when I say that, so off the top of my head, I can immediately think of the BMW M cars are automatically upclassed and cannot run in enthusiast class. The Toyota Supra automatically upclassed. And so basically the idea is that there is a ceiling of performance, or maybe I should say there's a floor of performance. That would be the better way to say it. There is a floor of performance that if a car in very minimal mods with a minimal mod trim can run fast lap times like the Supras, they automatically get upclassed. So that keeps out people from being an overdog in that class. And again, the idea being that you want people to come in that class. You don't want them to immediately be overrun by extremely fast cars. So for an enthusiast class, again, getting back to your question, which was what are sort of our expectations there? I think we have to have an expectation that it is a bit of an entry class. So guys, I'm not going to expect guys necessarily to show up with a full livery on their car, sponsors, right? They may have some stickers, they may have some things, but they are sort of getting into time attack and trying to learn what it's about. So, their car prep level is going to be somewhat lower than some of the other cars there. So, from that perspective, but just because you have a lower prep level doesn't mean that you still can't act in a professional manner. I think you should still show up with your car looking proper, right? And not being held together by duct tape and things like that. And this sort of goes back to something that this is a reason I love time attack, which is, for me, I want my car to look is good, or probably in my case even better than the times that it runs, right? Like I want my car to look good and I want it to look fast, and so that I'm ready and the car's ready, and so I can go out and turn my best lap times. I don't want my car being showing up with fenders being held on by like 2 bolts, and
Hey, there's zip ties on
whatever, right? Like, but like, I mean, you also kind of see, and I get it, but at the same time, I don't know, like you see that you can kind of have battle scars, right? And people do the, they'll, like if you ran over something or you went off track and you tore a splitter, or you ripped your bumper, and so then they like drill the holes in a bumper, and I'm gonna, I'm kind of gonna give some people some flack
The
for it, but
zipper, the zipper zip tie.
yeah, yeah, the stitches, the zip tie stitches, right?
Yeah, there you
Like,
go. Yeah.
I mean, okay, I get you're doing something in the moment for to keep your car on track, right? Like, you're making a repair, but at the same time, I'm not expecting you to go out and buy a new bumper every time, but like just having some of that stuff, your car should look the part when you show up, and that goes, I think, even for enthusiast class. It should look good, and this goes without saying, but like it should be in good mechanical shape.
Yeah, and I think we can both agree, like them showing up prepped and ready with a good running car, like you said, livery doesn't need to be full tilt like crazy livery or even a livery at all. Obviously, you're just going to be kind of helping out and working with the sponsors you have given with some stickers on the side of your car, so on and so forth. And it's nowadays it's so easy to print a T-shirt or two, and I will say this, and I hope, because I hope people have learned by now, fire doesn't discriminate whether you're in enthusiast class or if you're in unlimited class. Either which way, it's coming for you, right? Especially if you drive a Subaru, that sumbitch is going to catch on fire at some point. Ask Dewey. He knows. So definitely one of those things. You want to wear a fire suit. I think, and this is to kind of give you some idea too. So when I first started out, I didn't wear a fire suit like many. And it was always, well, I'm the lower tier. I never ran into the enthusiast class. I went right to street because it was kind of before the enthusiast thing really happened. And it was just one of those things where I always looked at it and went, I don't need a suit. That I don't really need that. It's something that you're only going to need later on when you're going really fast. But the reality is this. Fire never discriminates. It'll come for you in any which way. You want to try to be as safe as possible. And I know the organizations that I ran in were trying to push that onto me. And obviously I was very ignorant in the beginning of just thinking it'll be okay. And so I do like the fact that, again, like these organizations are pushing that as an agenda more and more. Hans devices, making sure the helmets are up to date, and getting people in full regalia, from the jump start. And I think that's a really positive thing. It does hurt, obviously, because suits aren't expensive to keep
That's
up,
right, yeah.
to get good stuff. But I mean, what's your thought on that? I mean, obviously, with your start to Time Attack being more recent than mine, what's kind of been your impression from the organization side to the driver side? Have they been pushing it? Have they not seemingly been pushing it? Are the drivers more inept to just go do it on their own? What do you think, Gilroy?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially over the last handful of years, the last 3, 4, 5 years, the organizations have definitely been pushing more to, think about safety. Think about safety. Think about safety. It is in your best interest and everybody's best interest to, do everything you can to protect yourself. And with that being said, I think that they also have to, which, I mean, we can discuss it another time, but they also have to think about, barriers to entry. And I think that this sort of goes more with, I think you see this more in the SCCA, and I think that and I'm going to say this because I think that they cater, and they have specific classes catered to very, very entry level cars, right? You don't see the type of cars coming out in Grid Life or Global Time Attack in terms of prep level. Grid Life and Global Time Attack is generally a higher prep level for the base cars than SCCA is. And a lot of that even comes down to SCCA really tries to funnel cars from autocross into time attack. They want that crossover. So they have written their rules in a way to where they can try and do that. So you can have a lot of entry-level cars with very little prep easily transition from autocross to time trials. So, and with people coming from autocross, right, like people never, I don't think I've ever seen, and someone can correct me, I don't think I've ever seen someone show up at an autocross and wear fire protection. Right?
Interesting. I've never even thought about that.
Yeah. And so I think that's right. That just sort of is the mindset, right? And they say, well, I don't do it for autocross, like, and my car's not prepped very high, and well, it's only like 30 seconds, 60 seconds on a course, and like it's a very low risk that something's going to happen, and I'm in a stock car anyway, so like, why do I need to wear all this, right? And I also think that goes to, when I first started getting into this, there was still, and I think I'd be interested to see if you agree, there was sort of a stigma, like if you were wearing like fire protection, if you were wearing a race suit, you had race gloves, but you were, but your car was only mildly modified. People kind of look at you, be like, what, like you think you're a race car driver just because you put that on? Like your car still sucks.
I completely agree with you, and obviously you still see that at like HPDE days, where if you show up and the guy's wearing the full suit, the whole thing, and you look at his car and you're like, you're rocking a stock Mustang. What are you worried about? And
which I think is ridiculous. I think it's totally ridiculous.
I do think in recent times it has become more acceptable. When you say ridiculous, I know you mean it's ridiculous that people look at that as a negative. Like,
thank you. Yes,
it's one of those things where people have definitely grown more accepting of it, and they see it as more of a positive. I mean, I don't know about you, I've definitely seen car fires happen on stock cars. Yeah. Cars that have no modifications done to them whatsoever, and I've seen them catch on fire. I mean, I can literally think of two right off the top of my head where a Camaro burned all the way to the ground, and then a friend of mine's Mustang, we caught it and put it out with a fire extinguisher because he had a stock fuel line, got a pinhole leak, and it's spraying onto his header. Yeah, anything can happen out there. Anything.
Yep.
So to kind of reiterate, I think that the ability for people to wear things like Hans devices and full race suits are definitely becoming more and more acceptable, and people are more looking at it as, hey, you're just trying to be safe, and because obviously we're playing in a sport that it's dangerous. No matter how you say it, it is a dangerous sport. Things can happen. Cars nowadays are so incredibly fast that things happen in the blink of an eye. We're all not driving 91 Honda Civics and Miatas anymore. So it's definitely one of those things where things are happening really quickly. So we're trying to do everything we can. So it is cool that we're seeing that, and it is. Yeah. Now, to go back to the professionalism part of it, personally, me, as soon as you put on the suit, like, you don't even have to go crazy with all the names and sponsors and all that other jazz. But at least if you're wearing the suit and the gloves, and it's all like at least a thought out situation of you didn't buy red gloves and bought a blue suit and yellow socks, and as long as you thought it out,
unless that's like your brand.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah,
unless you're you're one of the, what is it, VW, that does like a whole bunch of different colors on all sorts of crazy crap. Yeah. But 100%.
But like you said, a little bit of thought, right? A little bit of thought, going into, I've got a silver car, and maybe I can incorporate some of that, right? Or like, what kind of color scheme do I want, right? Like, it doesn't have to be much, just a little bit of thought.
And so to kind of jump within the topic, so something I've actually been watching every day that it comes out, World Time Attack started putting out these precursor videos leading up to World Time Attack, right? And they're kind of going in and interviewing and talking to each of the drivers and teams and so on and so forth. And that, to me, is an absolutely amazing move by World Time Attack, because they're really putting, my opinion is, that's professionalism, right? That's getting me involved. That's getting me to understand the drivers and the teams and everybody associated that are running in World Time Attack. I do understand, though, if you're talking about Grid Life, World Time Attack, or GTA, that is difficult because some of these guys don't even know if they're going to sign up until 2 weeks before.
Sure.
So it can absolutely be a very difficult situation to know who to interview, talk about, so on and so forth. But it's great to see that they're pushing that effort out there and they're getting guys, and it's something some of you might have seen. Obviously, like Kilgore has seen. Like I started going out and just saying, hey, I want to get these drivers and cars recognized because I think. And this is going to go into the organization side of the house, right? From a professionalism standpoint, I'd love to see these organizations do an exponentially better job at getting us to know the drivers and their cars. Right. Because a weird thing about this is I might know Kilgore, but I might not even know what he looks like. There's so many drivers where, like, you walk through the pits and I could walk right by the guy, but I'll walk up to his car and be like, well, I know this is Kilgore's car, but I couldn't tell you what he looks like, type thing. And I think that's something we have to change. We have to get into the mindset of building the heroes of the cars, of the series, right? And for the people that are returning and coming back and really putting the sport first, I think we really have to push that from the organizational organizational side, and really push that agenda of these guys are putting, tens of thousands, if not, $100,000 into these cars, hundreds of thousands of dollars into these cars, and they need to get that reciprocal, caveat. Like, let's give them more, right? My opinion. What do you think? I mean, what do you think from these organizations that do you think they're giving enough back there?
I think that they are starting to move that direction. I think they are starting to get better. And I think, right, if you're talking about Global Time Attack and you're talking about Grid Life, or even World Time Attack Challenge, organizations that are putting out pretty serious media compared to most grassroots motorsports, organizations. It is, right, like if you want your own, it serves the interest of the organization itself to put this sort of information out, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Get to know the drivers, right? Get to know the drivers. And even the fans who show up, which when we went to, I'll use myself as an example, and I didn't mean to do it, but it's something that now that I've thought back about it, I'm like, well, of course. So when we were at Super Lap Battle earlier this year, on Sunday, it's on Sunday, they always do the grid walk, right? And so one of the cool things that they did this year is they actually put out like a media guide, right, for people who are actually showing up to the event. Okay. They had pictures of everybody in their cars, so you could, as they're walking through the pits, they could see, the cars. They could know, what cars were there and who the driver was. And there were actually a couple people walking around trying to get autographs of the drivers. And so during that Sunday session, I'm walking around looking at some of the other cars, but I was still in my race suit. And some guy comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, like, are you a driver?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, what car are you?" I'm trying to get everybody's signature, right? And I say, "Oh, like, I'm number. I think I was running 82 at that event for F82, the M4 designation." So, so he's like, "Oh, okay." So, right, he flips to the page. I give a signature, an autograph, and but it's that sort of thing where, right, just looking, especially if you're at an event where there's a lot of spectators or even some spectators, you want to look like a driver, so that people can recognize you as a driver, and they may want a photo, right? Like their kid may want a photo. Their kid may have never met a race driver before, and you could be the first one they meet, right? Like you just need to be ready for that opportunity and present yourself in such a way so that when that opportunity comes along, you're ready and you don't miss it. And the other thing that I want to also sort of put in here, as well as we're talking about, wearing a race suit, acting like a professional, having some professionalism. And I think that that also benefits the driver as well, because in the event something happens, not like anything crazy, terrible, not that the driver crashes or anything, but let's say that maybe on track I made a mistake and I cost the guy behind me his best lap, or he was on a fast lap, right? If I have been giving off a professional demeanor and I've been acting, with the most professionalism that I can, and you will probably get the benefit of the doubt in terms of, yeah, it was just a mishap, it was just a misunderstanding, or if the organizers have to come talk to you and say, hey, there's something going on, or somebody said something about you, you may get the benefit of the doubt if you actually are giving off a professional appearance versus someone who looks like they don't know what's going on. Their car's all over the place, right? Like, they're going to show up and they're going to be like, yeah, there's probably a reason why this guy spun on track, right? Like, it can actually help you.
I can definitely see where that's really 100% agree, where that's gonna really have an impact on how they're gonna approach you and how they're gonna treat you in that situation. Really wanted to jump back into the driver booklet that GTA put out, and I want to touch on this because of two main reasons. So as you stated, awesome. Like, I love that they put that out. So freaking awesome. Where they had picture of the driver, picture of the car. Awesome, right? And so happy they did that. That's like the professionalism that we want to see from those organizations by far. Here's the negative. The drivers that were supplying the photos. You look through some of those photos and literally said to myself, who the hell let this man out of his cave? Like, did not make sense to me that this would be a photo that you would actually submit to someone who says, this is actually going to be on print cardstock. This is going to be something we're going to hand out, because they told people what it was for. And in my head, I went, you couldn't take the 5 minutes to put on your suit, stand in front of a white backboard and take a photo, or sit in your car for 2 seconds and take a quick shot? Like, I know that a lot of guys are not good with taking selfies and photos. Get a woman in your life. I don't know what to tell you, but get something going on. Get a best friend. I don't know. Take 5 seconds away from working on the car and take a decent photo. Like, all it was that, and they couldn't supply it. And that took me that moment. And I went, this is where these drivers need to get some sort of media training or something of that level, where I think that people need to understand, and I hope these guys are listening right now and understand, when any organization asks you to provide some sort of photo, and don't get me wrong, right? Like, we need to show our personalities. I think that's where the big divide's going to be, right? It's I want to show my personality. I was watching drifting this morning or yesterday or whatever, and what's his freaking name? He looks kind of goofy, but he's wearing a cowboy hat, and they did the bye 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 dance in the beginning part of the Formula Drift thing. George, I don't know. I think it's Jeff George, Jeff something, whatever. Right. At the end of the day, he's showing his personality, but he's still dressed in the suit. He's still showing his personality, and at the end of the day, like, it's great. It's great for everybody, but when it comes down to it, like, you need to know when to show that personality, and also when you want that professional, like, it's going to be printed on cardstock for people to have, blah 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 blah, all those things. And I think that's something that we're kind of missing in that understanding. And I personally believe, and this is just an idea I'm going to throw out there, any and all of these organizations need to throw out, like, assign a photographer on practice day and throw a backdrop up that has Grid Life, GTA, whatever banner in the background, and get a headshot, or at least get like a 3/4 shot of each driver. That way they can put that into their information or whatever. That way they have that, right? You're getting that information from them without having to have them take it themselves, which apparently some of these people are incapable of. And the same thing goes with like photos of cars. So
yeah, no, I get it. You mean you mean my Facebook profile picture isn't good enough
from 2005 or whatever
yeah, for my wedding or something, right?
Yeah, right. That's just some of that stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I will say this though. I think that also is an indication of for Global Time Attack last year. That could have been the first time that some of these drivers have actually gotten a request for that type of information. I think you were seeing that previously this was not something that was practiced a whole lot by organizations, and now they themselves are starting to say, okay, hey, if we want to be an organization that people are associating with, a high quality product, we need to look the part. We need to start getting some of this to look better on our social media, on the broadcast, etc. So we need to start doing a better job, right? I mean, we need to have pictures of drivers, and they need to actually look like they are drivers, for sure. So I think as organizations do it more, hopefully the drivers will also become better at it and have that information readily available. If you're a listener out there or a viewer and you're going to want to be participating, or you currently are participating in Global Time Attack, Grid Life, any of these organizations, know that some of these guys are now, some of these organizations are now looking for that type of information, pictures of your car, etc. So even at an event, ask someone to take a quick picture. I mean, it's not very hard. Just a little bit of forethought will make your picture look a lot better, and you won't be the guy or the girl whose picture looks terrible and they're like, okay, that person looks like they just rolled in, from 24 hours of working on their car, and then they stood up and got a picture taken of them, and then they got back up under the car.
Yeah, and so I'm going to kind of take from that, right? And then I'm going to go, so I think a lot of the organizations now in their live streams have really started pushing like interviewing of drivers and trying to get the drivers more involved, which is absolutely amazing. Love to hear it. And that's one of those things that just learning to speak on camera, learning to understand like who you're thanking and like sponsors and so on and so forth, right? You got to be on point with those things. And I understand as drivers, like you're some people will say, well, I'm just here to drive, right? I'm just here to drive. But at the end of the day, these guys have got to understand that driving is a huge portion of it, but how you are able to show off yourself, your car, your team, all those things, and your sponsors that are now participating with you, essentially, you are a voice for the sponsor. You are a voice for the organization. When you go to these events, just keep in mind, like we're talking about professionalism for a reason, and that's simply because when you're talking on camera, you're representing the organization. You're representing every sponsor that's on your car. You're representing that along with yourself. So anything embarrassing or stupid that you say is now, reciprocated by all of those individuals.
I'm looking at you, Kyle McHugh.
And it's just one of those, and I'll give it to Kyle, right? Like he was absolutely being himself, and he, like we talked about before, in that moment, he wanted to be himself and show the world like what he is, and that's perfectly acceptable. Now, granted, in that moment, it's also one of those situations where we look at it and go, we're trying to keep this a more, family-friendly broadcast and keeping the F-bombs to a minimum. But at the same time, I'm going to, speak my part and say, a part of what I was trying to do as as a commentator slash interviewer in that moment is I was trying to get him and Turner to turn up the wick on each other and to start a quote unquote like rivalry type situation. Let's have a conversation about how this guy's going to go faster and then this guy's going to go faster and how you're going to beat him and what are you going to do for, and because I wanted to amp the audience up so that the audience can understand, like, this is a battle. This is a legitimate battle that we're trying to watch here. It didn't quite go as, we had hoped. But, again, it was cool, though, because you got to see his personality. Now...
It was memorable.
It was memorable.
For sure.
It absolutely was. But it also is one of those things where, like, is that how you want sponsors to remember you as? Yeah, probably not. Like, that's not how I would want to be represented in that manner. So that's just me, though. But if that's his personality and that's how he wants to be, then absolutely. Like, there's, people will say it in this manner of, like, there's always got to be heroes and villains, right? So, people
Sure.
do come across and love being the villain in a situation. And that's cool. Like, my opinion simply is that the sport loves stuff like that. Like, I go back to, and I talked about it in the last episode a little bit, but when myself and John Carson were kind of going at it in our racing endeavors, I thought if that story was told how it was occurring, I thought, oh my God, people would probably be eating this up. People would absolutely love that this rivalry and that we're like going so hard at each other trying to win. And that's something that I think some of these stories just aren't really being told. And we'll cover that in a future episode on time attack coverages and how, we think they could be better, worse, or indifferent. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day, people have to remember they're speaking on behalf of companies, on top of sponsors, on top of themselves. And I think that they really realistically kind of need training. And I don't expect the organizations to be the people that have to do that. But I really want people to understand, like, when I was walking around COTA having one of the best time of my life talking to all the drivers, because I absolutely love it. I love talking to the drivers. I love getting their impressions and understanding what's going on track, because I've always felt like that was the thing that was missing in time attack.
Yep.
But getting out there and talking to them, it's like, I hate that I feel like I'm like prying it out of their cold, dead hands. Like, I got this mic and I just want to ask you a couple cool questions and tell me how an amazing time you're having, or maybe if you're having a crappy time, or if, someone just saved you by, helping you out, or what, like, because there's so many cool stories that can be told in the time attack paddock, where it's like, guy I'm competing against just gave me the fitting that I needed to get my turbo back, oil, getting my oiling system back up and running, and blah, 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 right? At the same time, like, you're at COTA and you're learning it for the first time, and I'm sure that if you talk to competitors, they're going to give you a help out hookup on, benefits of which ways to go and when to brake and so on. So, like, there's tons of stuff out there like that. And if they could just talk to the media, the same way they're talking to the other drivers and getting that personality out. Stephen Wynn, I actually loved interviewing Stephen Wynn, because he just always had something like great to say. He was amazing at everything. Like, he told the story, let us understand. The only caveat I had wasn't loud enough. Like, and that's something that was really difficult. Audio levels in the pits is always hit or miss. I mean, you watch professional racing and it's still difficult there. So, I mean, it is what it is. Give me something else. What's something else that we've been talking about in this professionalism game that you think is on there?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that you were talking about there that made me think of something else, which is, and we sort of hit on this a little bit, right? But one, I think that even there is a certain level of professionalism where, especially we're talking about this outer professionalism, especially this media side, of being authentic, right? People can see when you are or aren't authentic. Kyle McHugh was no doubt being authentic to himself in that moment where he was getting interviewed and talking about how crappy everything was going at that moment. There's at least a little bit of respect there for that he's being authentic to himself. At the same time, you know what, like, if you are there just to drive and you're like, look, I just want to show up, I just want to drive, and then if I do well and I win my class, great, I'll take my trophy and I'll head home. And like, you know what, like, if that's all you want to do and that's sort of your authentic self, that's okay. You can do that. But for other guys or girls who sort of, want to maybe, if they get coverage, if they, are shown on social media, if they're shown on the broadcast, then if you do well in terms of the way you present yourself, organizations will want to come back to you and continue to follow you, and that is how you can build your brand, get people to know you, and so you want to do that, and you want to do that well, which is everything, right? We've been talking about here, and I think that sort of goes back to, even at an enthusiast class level, even at a lower class level. If we're talking about Grid Life and Global Time Attack, and we're talking about organizations where there, is some sort of media coverage, even if it's going to be a magazine later on, one, they want to show cool cars on camera, or they want to show cool cars in the magazine, and they want, so you want your car to,
meet those expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You need to have you need to have, if they give you stickers to run by the organization, you need to run those stickers. Because if you don't have those stickers on, they're not going to put you on the broadcast, or they're not going to put you in the magazine, right? Because they give you those stickers for a reason. So put them on and put them in a spot to where they photograph well. And that's another reason that they say they will give you some guidelines as to where to put those stickers. So do that, as well as make your car look good, make it look good, so that they can, that they want to broadcast it, that they want to put it up.
I'm going to jump in on you second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a big thing there's Timmy Turner at Coda, right? I'm just going to say it. His car looked phenomenal. Like, absolutely. He wore the suit. He looked good doing it. And what did it get him, right? He got voted and got a brand new helmet that was painted by, I wish I could remember the design guy, because I started following them on Instagram. They make great designs on helmets. But one of those things where immediately, like, it drew me to the car, drew me to the driver. All because it was just a situation where the guy looked the part. And as you stated, right, like, if you're in Sunday Cup, is my expectation going to be hugely high? Which I understand. Sunday Cup is apparently a hugely oh my God, up in arms topic about, is that even Time Attack? But we'll digress from that for now. But with that said, you have things like Club TR and Street Class and those type of classes in the different organizations. And I think we can all get a little bit more professionalism in this sport. Now, I will say, people like Mike from GST Motorsports, I think he had professionalism, but at the same time, Mike was Mike, and everybody understood what Mike was. Now, he had Westfall driving for him, which was, he had a few people driving for him, but lastly, Westfall. And obviously, Westfall's very successful in motorsports, an amazing driver. And obviously, they had a very good professional working relationship within the team, highly professional. But they were such realistically a small scale, like Subaru shop type situation, that definitely one of those situations where I'm like, yeah, like, it was incredible to watch what they could do. but you weren't looking at them like, oh my God, they're such just like this huge organization, and like probably how most people look at like Life Motorsports, saying, oh my God, they're this huge organization that just crushes everybody because they have such huge amounts of money thrown in this, which they don't actually. People really don't understand that Life Motorsports isn't this like endless bucket of money they keep dumping into this car. It's just a handful of guys that are just really that committed and really trying to get this car to the next level type situation. But yeah, just sorry to tag on to what you were saying with Sunday Cup, Street, all those classes. Professionalism needs to be there and can be. So
yeah, let's give a shout out. Pat Wilson Graphics.
There you go, Pat Wilson Graphics.
There it is. Yeah, Pat Wilson Graphics. So if you want to check it out, you can go check out Tim Turner's Instagram account where he posted some photos. So I went and grabbed that real quick. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, right. Like to your point. No offense to Tim Turner. He has a great looking car. It's a beautiful E46 M3. He's got a wing on it. He's got a splitter, right? Like, but I think he's running in street. Maybe even limited. I can't remember exactly.
I don't recall.
It's not the fastest car, but that's simply because of the class that he has to run in street or with Global Time Attack. Yeah, he was running street, so he's running the same class I was in.
Well, you hit on a perfect concept, right? Professionalism. His car's liveried up. He looks the part. The car looks fast. Now the interesting bit,
it is fast.
It's
fast.
It's quick. I'll give
That's
it
right.
quick.
That's right.
It is not fast. But I will say this, but he checks all the boxes, and that's something. And I'm just going to throw it out there. Something that Amir said in his recent podcast with Professionally Awesome and their podcast. Right? It doesn't have to be the fastest car on track to be an epic time attack car. An epic time attack car can still be a slower car, but it's about building, within that spirit of the rules and all those magical things, and just building it with you and some friends or a shop, and just having a fun and great time with it, building a car that you love and that you care about. That, in essence, to me, makes the big difference between a cool car that I see out at the track in a time attack event, and at the same time, I've seen guys show up with baller setups with incredibly fast cars. No livery, no nothing, and I could almost care less. I'd rather watch the guy go slower and have more fun and look the part. And to some degree, I mean, I will caveat myself there to some bit, but it is one of those things. What do you think?
No, I get it.
Does that
to your point, I totally agree with you. And I'm going to give Tim some credit for an E46 M3. It is a quick E46 M3, but when you're in street class in a naturally aspirated inline six, even though that I think what is that? That's a oh gosh.
Come on, BMW guy.
I should know this. I know S54. I think it's the S54, right? Like S54 inline six, and you're running against 700 horsepower Supras. It's going to be It's going to be a tough road. But let's also go back, like kind of on this note. This also makes me think of an enthusiast class. Jonathan Wheeler. You had Jonathan Wheeler, and then you also had Robert Rushton. Jonathan Wheeler was in a 370Z, great looking car. It is a quick car, and he drives the wheels off that thing. And then you have Robert Rushton, who's in a Honda Civic Type R, but it was the previous generation. I'm not sure. I think there's the FL5 that's out currently. I'm not sure what the previous generation is.
I'm not a big Honda guy anymore.
Yeah, but it's also like it's a great looking car. It's clean. Yep. It's got a good sticker package on it.
I think it even still has fire damage on the hood, which is pretty cool too.
Okay, yeah, right. So, so like even with those guys, right? Like they get plenty of airtime. and it's because their cars look good. And I mean, Jonathan Wheeler, like I think he wakes up and he pounds 4 Red Bulls before he's even out of bed. Like his energy level is just like way high, way high. But at the same time, like we had never met before, and I could not have asked for a better person to be parked next to in the Coda garages, because he was like super helpful. He was so glad for everybody to be there. He wanted to help you if you needed anything. And I think,
And he had
again, that
extra
just
chicken
goes
suits.
to he did. He had a number of suits which I turned down. He was like, dude, here you go, put this on. I was like,
I don't know how any of those guys wore those suits, man. That was way too hot for that.
Yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, I mean, again, to your point, all about, professionalism, as we've been speaking about here. They prep their cars really well. They're fast on track because they spend the time prepping their cars. And look, things happen when you get to the track. Nobody is going to argue with that. But I've also seen plenty of guys who show up, they roll the car out of the trailer, and then they immediately start wrenching on it, or they're like, oh yeah, I've got to finish changing the oil pan gasket because I wasn't able to get it done. Like,
I'm not going to call out anybody here, but Donald Brown, I think, won the championship of this at Coda.
Yes,
a fellow Subaru brethren,
so.
Man. He, from the moment he rolled that car out, they started. I think they got 1 lap throughout the entire weekend. I think they got one. Maybe
that's tough.
I don't know if it actually ran a good lap, but I think he ran 1 lap. But and like you said, right? That's incredibly difficult for the entire team, because you're showing up and you're just having to struggle from the jump start. And I'm going to tell you right now, I showed up to an event, like I told you about Road Atlanta. We showed up to that event not ready. At the same time, like, I've definitely showed up to events and ran 1 lap and then immediately had to go put a motor in a car. So it can happen. I understand it. Like, we all know it. And that's also part of motorsports. We can't take that for granted as well, that motorsports as a whole is a fickle bitch. She will bite you one day and give you the biggest kiss on the planet on the next day. And that's what makes this so much fun. And that's what makes it something that we all enjoy to do, because it's not easy. It's something that we always have to strive for. And that's, like, just to really pound it home, I think when we get into the professionalism, right, I think it can make your life easier, because like you talked about in the very beginning, checklists. So one thing me and my team developed was checklists. So that way I could get guys that maybe weren't 100% familiar with the car. Maybe they weren't, 100% like part of my team, but I could hand them a checklist and say, check this all off, make sure all this is complete. And they were able to go through and accomplish that, and that made sure that the lugs were tight, the brakes were checked, make sure no fluids were leaking, hoods strapped down, and funny enough, the thing that kills us all, make sure the GoPros are actually charged up and running.
Yep.
It's all the simple
Absolutely.
stuff that you can take away from the driver, from the team owner, from those type of situations. And in that situation, it can ease stress. It can allow you to be able to have time to do the interview. Because one thing that always blows my mind is when you go ask a driver, hey, do you want to do an interview? And they go, no. I'm like, you're throwing away perfect opportunity to get your brand, your sponsor, your anybody out there. Everybody should be clamoring to talk to the organization, to talk to the live stream, to talk to really anybody, because you'd be amazed about how many times there's just random sponsors walking through the paddock just wanting to talk, just to see, and maybe that little conversation that you have with them can now lead to something at a bigger at a later date. So that's something always to think about, guys. Like, I can't stress it enough.
Well,
right.
and right, like, to your point, there's just, I think there's sort of a mental thing, which if you're getting interviewed and someone sees that you're being interviewed, then they are probably going to assume like, oh, he's being interviewed or she's being interviewed for a reason.
Yep.
There must be some reason that they want to talk to him or her. And if I'm a sponsor, like, oh, who is that? Like, why are they getting airtime? Are they running quick? Like, are they, are they in the chase for a podium? Or what, right? So, like, if someone's talking to you or they put a microphone in front of your face, take the opportunity. I mean, it's not easy being on camera and talking, but you'll get better at it as you do it more often, and it's okay, right? Like, you do your best, and that's all anyone's going to ask of you. And as you do it more and more, then you'll get better and better at it. You'll kind of figure out like, oh, what I need to do here, what I need to say there. And here's a tip, which Jaeger did when he was at Coda, which is if they say, hey, like, do you want to be on camera? We need an interview in a few minutes, and we'd like to see like how your battle's going. Say yes, and then also be like, do you know the questions you're going to ask me, right? Like, that way you can maybe be, if they do know what the questions they're going to ask you are, you can sort of be thinking and formulating an answer in your head before you have to do it live without knowing what the questions are. Now, the conversation may end up, going Jaeger,
afar,
like in this example, may start asking you questions because you said something interesting, and he's like, oh, well, what happened with your turbo? Oh, like, what changes? You said you got faster, and it was because of your suspension. What changes did you make to the suspension, right? Like, but then you're starting to get into things that You're starting to get into aspects that you feel comfortable talking about it. Oh yeah, well, the car was loose on entry, so I, changed the compression a little bit in the rear, and then I adjusted the tire pressures, right? And now you're sounding like you really know, now you're really sounding like a bit of a gearhead, right? Like you're providing really good content for the organization, and they're going to want to go back to you. They're going to want to be like, oh, let's go see what's going on. What other changes have you made, right? So practice. Ask what the questions are, if you have that opportunity, but don't be scared, don't be shy. We've all got to start somewhere.
Well, and I think a big thing that you said too is, man, we want to hear the drivers. We want to hear those conversations. In the event of it's a GTA broadcast, we want to hear from the drivers way more than we want to hear Cuban and me talk. That's for sure. So we want to hear all about the drivers, and that's just a big thing that, like you said, right? We just keep practicing at it. Hey, when you guys want to, come on the podcast. We'll give you tons of practice. We'll, sit you down for an hour and grill you here and there. We might give you a couple questions so you know what's going on. But, at the end of the day, I think it could be a good little training point that can get you a little farther. So, Kilgore, wrap us up here. Give us a little summary. Give us a little lowdown. And then, give us a little bit.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, right, as we've been talking, I kind of see this as two buckets. One, you have your inner professionalism, right? When you're prepping your car, make sure that you're doing everything you can beforehand. Make sure you know what your schedule is. And figure out, okay, what are the things that are absolutely must-haves, in order for me to get out on track, right? Make sure, if you need to put on new brakes, if you've got new brake pads and you've got new calipers and you think that yours may be starting to get to the end of their life, you know what? Let's go ahead and put those on, and let's make sure that we have everything ready to go for the weekend, instead of running the first couple sessions and then you're like, oh man, the brakes are really, they're getting low. I got to change those now. At least I brought them with me. And now you're doing a brake job in the paddock, which is not a lot of fun. Go ahead and make sure you have like all that out. And as you said, Jaeger, get some checklists together. Make sure that you have everything planned out for pre-event, even during the event. And there's one thing that you said, which I think is a very good conclusion, which is if you already have everything checked off on the car and you went through your checklist and you know that the car is in good condition, that frees up your bandwidth when you actually get out on track, right? You now have more bandwidth because you're not thinking about, oh, did I do this? Did I do that? Something doesn't quite feel right. It's not really quite turning to the right as good as I want. Like, did I check the lug nuts? Are all the lug nuts tight or whatever? Make sure you have everything checked off because that will be more bandwidth when you actually go on track. So those are some of the inner checklists and some of the inner professionalism that you need to make sure your car's running well. But then there's also that outer, the media facing professionalism. Make sure your car looks good. Make sure you look good. Try, if you can, have a little bit of forethought. Match your car and yourself and your driver's suit and your helmet, everything, so that you look good on track, and that will hopefully bring attention to yourself. Hopefully you're running well. Here's another thing. The more you're broken down and not on track, the fewer chances you have to be shown on the broadcast, right? So you want to make sure that you're out on track, and you want to make sure that your car looks good. And we want to see your car on track for all the right reasons. We don't want it to be because your car's on fire. Those are the bad reasons to be on the broadcast. So make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. So, and pictures, make sure you have some pictures, especially, for Global Time Attack. They're really making that push now. Make sure you got updated pictures of your car, updated pictures of yourself for broadcast, for media, because they definitely will push out that information for people who have that professional look to them. So I think that's my summary here for anybody who's out there listening. Make sure you have make sure you are professional with your own performance and your inner professionalism, and then also that media facing professionalism. Make sure you look good. Practice in front of a mirror. Try and do the things you can to make sure that it makes that you come off in the best light. What about yourself, Jaeger? What sort of things? I rambled on there for a little bit, but what sort of things could you summarize here?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You got to get the internal professionalism done. You got to get the external done. I think that's from a driver standpoint, from an organizational standpoint. We're seeing them get bigger and better as days go on. So it's good to see the professionalism of each of these organizations. I haven't run with Grid Life in a while, so I can't really speak to that too much. But from what I've been seeing and obviously hearing from guys who have, it's getting bigger and better by the day. So from a World Time Attack standpoint, they're really grabbing that by the handle and taking it to town. So that's all great information from those guys, and everything's looking on the up. Time Attack as a whole is growing, and this is where I think that the drivers need to kind of keep their professionalism up with how these organizations are growing and pushing, and sponsors are going to reciprocate this, and when they get this professionalism back from their drivers and organizations, and that's just going to keep pushing Time Attack into that limelight and back to that glory era of literally big rigs showing up with full-blown crazy teams, and that's what I want to see. I want to see that level of professionalism where you got the autograph signings, people showing up with favorite cars, favorite teams. I want to see that. I want to see this be as big as it could be. That's what I really want to be. That's what I want to see it. That's where I want to help it get to. So that's where I'm hoping. All right, Kilgore. So give us a countdown. Where can we be found? Where can you guys see our next episode? We got another one coming for you here real soon. All right, Kilgore, lay it out for them.
That's right. Yeah, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can also watch us on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you're on the road or you're in the car and you want to listen to one of our episodes. So that's where we can be found. We've also got an Instagram account, so you can find us on there, Perfect Lap Podcast. We'll be posting stuff up there as well. So hope you guys are enjoying the content, and we look forward to the next one. Jaeger, take us out.
All right, guys. Also, make sure to comment. Give us some comments of some of the best professional time attack teams that you've ever seen. And if you want to, you can even blast some people out and maybe we can get them sorted and give us some of the worst time attacks teams that you've ever experienced.